in a locked room with boarded up windows. The teacher, accused of murdering her husband, kept him. In addition to the fact that Miroshev was left almost without food and medication for nearly a year while his ex wife took care of him after a serious illness, she took his pension of 80,000 leva away from him. Her greed and cruelty disturbed Bulgaria's most seasoned investigators. Veselina Gineva was a primary school teacher in Burgas. She seemingly lived a normal life of a 60-year-old woman. She seemed to be a model teacher and neighbor. In fact, when her ex husband fell ill with a serious illness, she decided to take care of him and his finances. But it just seemed that way. She just seemed like a good member of society. But she was not. Nobody expected the cruel plan she had for her ex. Dmitry Miroshchev was a former engineer from Naftogym. He was 65 years old at the time of his death. Geneva would indeed hold him captive for 6 months, only on bread and water. After his death, she hid his body and took his pension for 2 years. In April 2021, the case reached the Supreme Court upon an appeal by the defendant, who challenged the decision of the Bukaz Court of Appeal. The court, in return, confirmed the ruling of the first instance. Burgas district magistrates found Veselina Gineva guilty on three charges. The Supreme Court of Cassation confirmed the verdict. The decision is final and not subject to appeal. However, the Supreme Magistrates acquitted the defendant on account of the indictment that she did not commit the murders for selfish purposes, since she had been taking Dimitar's pension while he was alive with a power of attorney signed by him. When Veselina took care of him, he was already suffering from severe alcoholism and had difficulty managing his money. Despite the partial acquittal, however, the magistrates did not reduce the sentence of the teacher, who earned the nickname the Black Widow by the media. According to the Supreme Court of Cassation, the removal of the qualification, murder for profit, does not significantly affect the degree of public danger of the act, which remains extremely high. One of the charges is that from May 2013 to August 1st, 2014, in her home in the Lazar residential area, Veselina Geneva unlawfully deprived her ex-husband Dimitar of his liberty by keeping him locked in one of the rooms of the apartment. For this, the court sentenced her to 6 years in prison. The second charge is for the murder of the menace himself, who was kept locked in a room with boarded up windows, systematically malnourished, without necessary medications and medical care. He died on August 1st, 2014, after several months of captivity in his former apartment, which remained with Veselina after the divorce. For this act, the Black Widow was sentenced to 17 years in prison. The third accusation is that during the period from Miroshev's death until August 31st, 2016, Geneva withdrew his pension from a bank 28 times, claiming that the meter was still alive. In this way, she damaged the statue budget by over 20,000 leva, for which the court sentenced her to 3 years and 6 months in prison. When Geneva eventually found out that the sentence was almost of 18 years, she was shocked since she declared in court that she was innocent and that she has been a kindergarten teacher for 29 years and had no wrongdoings in her life by now. In addition, she also mentioned that her mother, who is diabetic, will be worried about her and that will damaged her health even more. The lawyer, Veselina Vasilieva, who represented Geneva in court, later commented in front of the media: "My client is devastated. She believed and hoped that her sentence will be reduced. My expectations were that the case would be sent back for a new hearing in the Court of Appeal due to significant violations. I am surprised, despite Geneva's acquittal on one of the qualifying circumstances, namely that she did not commit the murder for selfish purposes. I am surprised that the court did not reduce the sentence, even minimally, as is the usual practice in a such case." Later on, the defense's thesis was revealed to be that of lack of evidence that Geneva caused the death of her ex husband. The Supreme Magistrates, however, have a different opinion. They recall that it was clarified by expert means that the diseases that existed in Demeter could not have led to a fatal outcome. Immediately before his placement with the defendant, his general health condition was satisfactory. A year later, the elderly man was already severely emaciated. His body weight has been reduced by 50% after living with Geneva. Experts indicated that the causes of Demeter's death were extreme malnutrition and dehydration for months, with the deterioration progressing to a state of extreme exhaustion, which led to a lethal outcome. According to the Supreme Court of Caution, the Burgas Court of Appeal gave a correct answer to defense's objection. The defendant had no legal obligation to take care of her ex-husband, but by taking on his care on her own initiative, she was obliged to provide him with a normal life, which she did not do at the end. Geneva is still in prison, serving her sentence for killing her ex husband in such a cruel and tragic way. He was suffering from an illness and starved, which led to him not being able to defend himself against his captor. Although there is too much evidence against her, Geneva still claims that she is innocent, that she is a good person, and that is really not any actual evidence against her.